George O'Neill, who's the director and community leader, that's right, of L'Arche in London. I just wanted to tell you, I don't know whether anybody here has been to L'Arche in the last muses, but I have. I had the amazingly good fortune, summer before this last one, to go to Choyu and have a week with Jean Bonnier, during which I feel I got to know him quite well, and I was completely, utterly blown over. I've been wanting to go to a L'Arche for years, but to actually experience the love of the show was just extraordinary. And so I'm looking forward to seeing George in his newly refurbished premises in London. But he's going to tell you something about himself, and we're going to see part of a film. I think I'll hand over to him. There will be time for questions at the end.
Hello, can you hear me? And are you okay if I sit down? I'll speak up, but are you okay if I sit down? Because it's just a bit easier doing the slides. My name's George, as Georgie said. I've been community leader of L'Arche in London now for about just over 3 years, actually. So, and before that, I did all sorts of things which were not connected with L'Arche at all. I was a civil servant for a long time, actually. So this is my take on L'Arche. L'Arche is a multifaceted being. And if you have seen it or come into contact with L'Arche or John Vanier or Faith and Light, I'm sure different people's takes on it are often very different. So this is my perspective. And what I'd really like to talk about is about the why behind L'Arche. And I'm doing that because I think quite often that's where you get to the root in organisations. But also this chap, Simon Sinek, and actually he's if you're into TED Talks, he's one of the most popular TED Talk people. He's a leadership guru, and actually he recently spoke at a conference with John Vanier. And actually I thought the juxtaposition was very interesting. And his take is that successful organisations are those that understand why they are doing things. So I want to talk a bit about L'Arche and about why we do things. Partly because, and this is a story which is very true, one of the things that's very easy to do when you talk about L'Arche is to over-romanticize it and to pretend it's all very easy. And L'Arche isn't easy. But for us, it can be a bit easier if we think about why. And this sense that if you've got a sense of your sense of direction and the big picture, that can help you deal with troublesome circumstances. So, what I'm going to try and cover is L'Arche, the story behind it, and how it all started, how we try to do things in London. I think I'm right in probably saying that L'Arche London is the closest community to Oxford, just about, and how I feel its mission has changed, and why I think, how you might describe the why behind L'Arche is different now to how John originally envisaged. So the L'Arche story. L'Arche was set up by this man called John Vanier, who I'm sure many of you have heard of. John is he's an extraordinarily interesting character. He was the son of the Governor General in Canada and actually joined the Navy at a very young age during the Second World War. And he worked his way up. He captained a ship actually in time. He was on HMS Britannia with the Queen. But he was searching for something different. And he got to know a priest called Père Thomas, who lived in rural France. And Père Thomas introduced him to people with learning disabilities. And John went through with Père and visited hospitals with people with learning disabilities. And actually he visited one particular hospital where they had twice as many men as they had space for with learning disabilities. And he says that he was struck by the fact that what they were really looking for, those people, they were really poorly treated, was relationship. And they were looking for people to be their friend. So John did something very, very brave. He set up a home. He set up a home with 3 men with learning disabilities. And he says at the time he knew that was an irreversible decision. He set up a home with 3 men called Raphael, Philip and Danny. Now what you're often not told is that Danny only stayed 1 night. He couldn't cope with it. But he set up a home with Raphael, and there's a picture of Raphael and Philip. And this is a picture of them, and actually this house still exists. I don't know if you went to visit it, Georgie, the original L'Arche house. At the time, it didn't have an inside toilet. I don't think it had a kitchen, really, of much sense of how we would understand the kitchen now. But they set up home, and at the time, I think John, it was quite a regimented. John was very into going to mass every day, so he would march Philip and Raphael to mass every morning. But they set up this home together, and this is how Philip described it. He said, when I came to L'Arche, there was no electricity, nothing. For lighting, we used candles. It was fun, no loos or showers. But I was so happy with that. I was beside myself with joy. Before, I didn't really have a life. All day, I spent in a day room, just sitting. You couldn't do anything, no going out. We were so bored, no occupation, nothing. It drove me to tears. I was not at home there at all. Gradually, things sorted themselves out at L'Arche, and that's Philip. And that's actually John Lanier's car at the time. And when John started the house at L'Arche, he never had a vision for it being bigger. His idea was you would only have as many people as you could fit in a car. So that you could go and visit people. He had this idea that he was going to take the guys out on holiday. But it was an idea that really took off, and it took off partly because John was asked to manage a home which is in the same village in Trolly in rural France, where I think there are about 20 men with learning disabilities. And because people came to visit from Canada and different countries, Trolly, very, very quickly, in 5 years, it went from Trolly in France to Toronto in Canada. And some of you may know about L'Arche in Canada because Henry Nguyen was part of L'Arche near Toronto, L'Arche Daybreak. And then from there it went to France, and it went to La Mercie and Cognac in France, and then to India. So very, very quickly L'Arche became a very, very strictly, if I can use that term, Catholic organisation, to an Anglican organisation, to an ecumenical organisation in Canada, to an interfaith federation in India, where the communities there are very, very largely based on the Hindu tradition. So it was an idea that really, really took off. And I can tell you there was not huge organisation behind it. Even today, I can speak from experience, there is not huge organisation between L'Arche and its wider federation. It's a pretty chaotic bunch, but it is in 37 countries. And there are 149 communities across the world. And there are 11 of those which are in the UK. So it's in France, it's in Canada, it's in America, India, but also there are lots of countries where there are just 1 or 2 communities, like Uganda and Kenya, and Australia where there are a few more, and Japan. But it's an idea, and there are still, I think there are something like 85 different groups of people who are exploring being L'Arche across the world. And we're supporting a community in Colombia, which is just in its early stages. And L'Arche London has also supported communities which have started in Zimbabwe and Uganda. So it's an idea that has really taken off. And this is how we do it in London. So that's some of us, it's not all of us, that's probably about half, I think. We number about 100 people, actually probably more than that, that's quite a conservative number. for people with and without disabilities. We live in quite a nice bit of South London, West Norwood, if you know it. And we support 32 people with learning disabilities. And those people have all sorts of different care needs or support needs. We provide registered care, we provide housing where people can live more independently. We provide community outreach. The traditional model of L'Arche is generally big houses of people with and without disabilities living in the same house. In London we do some of that, but also some of our people choose to live on their own, and they have a tenancy in a house, like you might have a tenancy in a house if you were privately renting it. And it's their home, they live there, but we have people who come in and are able to support them, often 24 hours a day or sometimes just a few hours a week. So we work with the individual, and we do that with a team of paid assistants who quite literally come from all around the world. I had the privilege of having supper with some of our assistants yesterday, just a small group of us, about 12. And I counted, and I think there were 10 nationalities in the room. There were only 2 people from England originally. We had people from Romania, Lithuania, Kenya, Uzbekistan, literally all around the world. They come to L'Arche with a really strong sense of vocation about wanting to live and work with people with disabilities. And I think the way we try to live L'Arche in London, I always describe it as we do 3 things. One thing we really try to do is we try and recognise the individual and to really see what is special and unique about that person. So there's a picture here up in the right-hand corner of Paul in the green jumper. That's Paul attending a concert. And he has had such a rich life. He has a passion for India. So he has been with L'Arche to India to do training with other L'Arche communities there about how you can enable people rather than simply do things for them. The other thing is that we try and provide a place of belonging. And a place of belonging not just in the community of L'Arche, but through L'Arche, the neighbourhood where we live. So we are linked in with artists and makers, with local churches. We are part of there's a local food market once a month called Norwood Feast, where we open up our garden and stalls are there. And through that, we hope that people find a rootedness, not just in L'Arche, but in their neighbourhood, and also through L'Arche, through the wider world, to the wider world. So people travel. People have been, this year they represented the London community at a big federation meeting in Belfast, where everybody from all the L'Arche communities around the world met. So we try and provide a place of belonging. And the third thing is, we really look for how we can support people in their spiritual life. And I think the way I often describe that is, we try to enable people to draw on the resources that their own spiritual life can bring. And I think that's an amazing thing, because if you're doing that, you're not only asking how can people be supported with their physical needs, their daily living needs, but actually you're looking for things that are unseen as well. What's going on for that person? How can we help them to find a place of value? How can we celebrate their gifts? How can we make sure that they feel that they have a role in life? And that's something that I think is quite unique to L'Arche. There are many excellent providers of services for people with learning disabilities. But I think providing that, particularly that kind of, that search for what's going on spiritually for people makes us very different. So we try to be a place where people's uniqueness is recognised, where their gifts are celebrated. We try to provide a place of belonging, and we really look for people's spiritual lives and how we can support that. And we describe it really as this, is that we live and celebrate together. giving time to practical, social and spiritual needs, and we try to be a place of belonging where we live. And I think celebration is a really, really important part of L'Arche. We're big on parties. We're big on birthdays. Birthdays are very, very special. And we're big on people's anniversaries for when they join L'Arche. Celebration, and John Vanier talks a lot about the importance of wasting time together, of having fun. So this year, people have been on holidays to Greenbelt. They were sailing. They go on activity holidays. We had parties, so we're having a big party to celebrate the opening of our new premises. There's a Halloween party and all that, but we really, really try to find that time and try to find spaces where we can enable people with and without disabilities to relax and be equal. But I really want to talk less about the practicalities and about how the mission of L'Arche is being shaped. And this is my take on it. And I think it's really about three things. One is rescue. The second is the importance of relationships and sign. And the third thing is sign. And I'm going to show a clip of a film which I hope will illustrate some of this. And I want to talk about this because the mission of L'Arche, as for any community, is so important. It's much harder to do L'Arche if you're not thinking about what its goal is, what its vocation and purpose is. And I think that's true for any community. I think that's true for churches. About being really clear why you are here, why this bit of Oxford would miss this church if it wasn't here. Why I think even successful neighbourhoods have a really strong sense of themselves. And I always thought that, I lived briefly in Oxford, I always thought I loved Cowley because I thought Cowley had a really strong sense of what made Cowley special, and it was always my favourite bit of Oxford. So I think it's really important to think about why we're here and what the purpose and vocation of something is. That's John he visited our community a few weeks ago with Mike, one of our most entertaining members, and Marcella, who actually helped set up L'Arche in Liverpool. And actually, I also want to talk about this because when I joined L'Arche, London, the community in London, really wanted to think about what it means to be L'Arche in London. And we're in a bit of London which is gentrifying very, very, very quickly. And it used to be quite rough, but now it's difficult to buy a home for less than £1 million, certainly a family home for less than £1 million. And we're surrounded by people, the professionals mainly, but cheek by jowl by people who are on the real poverty line. And people who are coming in and out of that community very quickly because the housing is so, and the tenure of housing can be so short. So we really wanted to think about what it meant to be L'Arche in London today. And I think what it means has developed and changed. So when John was setting up L'Arche, the story was people were in big institutions. So at its peak, in the 50s, most people with learning disabilities lived in institutions, alongside people with mental health issues, and they were really rife with scandals in terms of safeguarding things. People were really, really poorly treated, and it wasn't until 1986, although it was announced in 1961, that the first large mental hospital closed. And actually, this is a picture of St Lawrence's in Caterham. And some of the people we support started their lives there. They didn't have their own clothes. Men and women were separated. Some of our people still had issues with food, which originate there, because you had to eat what you got, and you had to eat quickly to make sure you got it. But that was what L'Arche started up. And we were taking people from those institutions into almost like family homes. And actually there was a chap called Brian who we supported. Sadly he died 10 years ago. But Brian wanted to go and see this place being demolished. He was taken by the community to go and see this place being knocked down, because he wanted to be clear that he wasn't going back there. So L'Arche very much started as a place of rescue. John rescued people, 3 men, from an institution where there were 80 people, an overcrowded institution. But John also very quickly realized that it became about relationship. And that what these people were really seeking was not somewhere nicer just to live, and greater freedom, and greater trust. But they were really seeking a relationship. And John realized that through that time, actually, it wasn't a one-way thing. It became a mutual relationship, and the people with disabilities changed him. And I think that's really, really, really true today. I talk to the assistants who come and work in L'Arche London. They are incredibly bright people. We have a doctor who's an assistant. We have physiotherapists. We had somebody who last year went off to become a pilot with Air France. She took a year out. We've got engineers. And we've got people, and maybe they're only coming for a year, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4. But they always talk about L'Arche being a place of growth. Sometimes it can be very challenging. The word I hear often is intense. But actually it becomes a place of growth. And working and living with people with disabilities changes them. And John uses this verse quite a lot. If you ever hear him speak about L'Arche, I'm sure he said this when you heard him, Georgie. Jesus said that when you give a lunch or a dinner, do not invite your friends or your brothers, or your relatives or your rich neighbours, in case they invite you in return and you would be repaid. But when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame and the blind, and you will be blessed. So L'Arche became a place of transformation and change, not just to the people with disabilities who were rescued or taken from the L'Arche institutions, but for the people who worked and lived alongside them. And people recognized they had their own disabilities. People recognized that they had their own need for friendship. And actually, one of the things I would say about L'Arche is if you come and if you've got young grandchildren or children who are looking for something to do for a year or two, encourage them to come. Because I think it's something you learn is, if I run out of batteries, is confidence, actually. People who come, young people who come and become assistants at L'Arche, I think leave more confident than when they arrive.
My fault.
It's okay. And more tender as well. And actually, one of the things he talks a lot, because actually before he started L'Arche, he was a lecturer, and he said he spent time with people of the head. And when he joined and started L'Arche, he started spending time with people of the heart. And that he learned through them how the real importance of friendship and relationship and tenderness. And yeah, and this is a quote from I was watching a short interview with him. And he said this: God chose the weakest to confound those who are stuck in their heads. So I think L'Arche moved from being something about rescuing people with disabilities and giving them value to being something based on relationships and on mutual relationships where people still develop, and that's still very true today. But I also think that now, and I think part of this is driven by the fact John Vanier is 89, he's very driven. He knows that his time on this world is very short. He's very choosy about who he spends his time with. He's very, very keen to spend time with young people. But I think now he's increasingly driven by the fact that L'Arche can be a sign to the wider world, and that people with disabilities can be a sign to the wider world. And I think you get a glimpse of this in a film. I don't know if any of you saw it, which has just come out, which came out over the summer. And it's a film called Summer in the Forest, which is about John. And I just want to show you a clip of it, because I think it gives a little sign of what it means for L'Arche to be a sign to the wider world.
Rejecting all authority and starting to live together. I knew nothing about this world of people with disability. As you laugh together, barriers drop.
Alors, quels sont tes projets, André?
J'emmène un Carrefour pour boire un coup.
Ça, c'est super. C'est vrai?
Oui.
Tu me payes, alors?
Oui.
Moi, je viens grand. Quelqu'un, il me traite de type, il faut s'arrêter avec ça.
You may fly like an eagle, but you'll find you walking tall with justice in his gun.
What is it to be a human being? Is it the power? If it's power, then we would kill each other. See, the wise and powerful lead us to ideologies, whereas the weak are in the dirt. They're not seeking power, they're seeking friendship. It's a message for all of us. It's about all of us.
And everything comes that every week.
So that's a trailer for a film. That's a trailer for a film that you can still get online. I think it was shown at the Picture House here, wasn't it? And about John, and about L'Arche in Trolli, and actually L'Arche in Palestine as well, the community in Bethlehem. And you get a glimpse there of the L'Arche story about how he set it up without knowing anything about people with disabilities. And I have to be honest, I knew very, very, very little about people with disabilities when I joined L'Arche as well. And how chaotic it was at the beginning. But by now he's saying how there is a message for everyone in the need for friendship. And he says that the language of power just leads us to ideology, leads us to war. But in L'Arche and in people with disabilities, there's a lead to friendship. And I think that's something which we feel really aware of in London. I've just spent some time with some of our assistants, well, with all our assistants actually, thinking about what is it, oh gosh, sorry, what is it that makes L'Arche and London special? And I think our assistants feel really strongly that actually we're a plucky little community, but we are a sign of something different in a city that is driven quite often by career and status. And we are a sign that actually of something different, and we're partly a sign of something different because we have 32 people with disabilities who are part of us, but also we're a sign of something different because we have so many people from so many different nationalities, some of whom have chosen to make London their home as a result of L'Arche. I have often been in a room with 10 or 12 assistants with 10 or 12 nationalities. And I just feel there's a real sense in London that we're exploring now how L'Arche can be a sign, perhaps just to the church or perhaps to the wider world, of something different, of the importance of friendship, the importance of finding somewhere of belonging. And John has been doing his part, so this is him in the top right-hand corner doing an event at the House of Lords with Justin Welby and, I can't remember the Catholic Church guy, he's the Cardinal from Westminster, sorry. And with the Pope, and down there earlier on with Mother Teresa. And recently, John Vanier won an award called the Templeton Prize, which some of you may know about the Templeton Prize being in Oxford, which is actually, previous winners have been Lord Rees, the Astronomer Royal, Desmond Tutu, Jonathan Sachs won it, I think, last year. So he's followed in the footsteps of people, and he's a man, if you see him now, with a real passion for telling the story of L'Arche and how it might be a sign of something different. And I think we're trying to do that in London in a small way as well. So there are some things that I've concluded in just my 3 years of being in L'Arche. One is actually to say thank you for inviting me, because one of the things I've really learned is that there is a huge amount of goodwill out there for L'Arche. I've been really, really struck that, particularly amongst church communities. But the second thing I've really discovered is that it's really, really important that we think about our mission. And I think that's something that that's one way actually also we can be a sign for some people, in helping people think about why they're here. There are lots of communities and different community organisations out there, but I think we're a community with a really strong sense of mission, and that makes us different to many of them. And that I also have come to reflect, which I didn't really expect to find when I started L'Arche, that London really does need L'Arche. Even the small, plucky community of 150 people in this big sea of 8 million people from all around the world, that London does need L'Arche, and perhaps we need to be slightly different so that we can really be that sign. So that's really all I wanted to say about L'Arche and about L'Arche in London. I hope that gives you a bit of a glimpse of what it is. I'm sure if you spoke to somebody else, they would say something different. But there would be elements, I hope, of that. But yeah, that's all I really wanted to say. If people wanted to ask questions, I'm really happy to ask, but equally I'm very happy for you to go off and warm up and get some lunch.
If you would like to ask a question, please